Yes, so this is the film that won the Grand Prix at Cannes last year, which is one below the Palme d'Or, but still very good. It's set in the early 1990s and it follows a group of HIV and AIDS activists that are associated with a group called ACT UP, specifically the Paris chapter. And at this point in history, the government had formally recognized the AIDS crisis, but there was still this frustrating sense of inaction. In one sense, education, not only within the LGBT community, but just at large. And also the film sees the group target a pharmaceutical company that they believe has been withholding certain test results about possible treatments. And what impressed me so much about it was the sense of absolute authenticity. This is not some neat memorialization where people who haven't undergone this experience can watch it and go, oh, how brave they were, and then just go back to their normal lives. This film really wants you to stop for a moment, step in these people's shoes and see the world through their eyes, and not just the tough parts, the highs and the lows, every nuance of it. And for me, I think it is a long film. It's 2.5 hours, I feel like I should point out, but I feel like it's very deliberate.
It didn't feel like that.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that because you're so immersed in it and you just really feel like you've gone through something by the end of it. That's all I can really, that's the only way I can describe it, I guess. And Robin Campillo, the director, and the co-writer Philippe Mongeau were both actually involved in ACT UP. So they've said it's not autobiographical, but it clearly does want to examine the everyday experience. And I think particularly what stuck out to me is the sense of the everyday experience being lived with extreme urgency. And that there is just tragedy becomes this almost everyday thing when you're in that situation. And sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's slow, like a glacier. And there's these moments where people want their deaths, if they're coming or not, to be politicized because they want to at least feel like they have that level of control.
Purpose.
They have a way to fight against the purposelessness of death.
Yeah.
And what's nice as well, though, is that Campillo keeps bringing it down to these very ordinary, quiet situations. It's the subway cars, it's the meeting rooms, and you just start to understand what it feels like to have, what happens when fear and grief are sustained over such a long period of time, because we associate them with very intense, momentary situations. And there's a character, Sean, who is HIV positive, played by Nahuel Perez Biscayat. And he says that the diagnosis has made him live things more intensely, more colors, more noise, more life. And he does brush it off as a joke, but I think it really does inform the aesthetics of Campillo's film, the idea of just savoring joy when it's there. So you have these moments like when they're at the Pride March and they're all dancing, they're being cheerleaders, or when they're at the club and it's the music and the lights are so hypnotic. It's like being transported to a different planet.
Even the way they kind of focus on the particles of dust in the air and things, it's just really cleverly sort of worked into the narrative.
Yeah, it's something so sensory about it. It's not just about the dialogue or the emotions. And as well, seeing the urgency in the meetings, because the film, there's something so, I think you mentioned this earlier, there's something so documentarian about it.
I was so engrossed in it and so with those characters that I kind of forgot I was watching a film and felt like I was watching a documentary. The performances are so immersive and they're so true, I guess is the best way of describing them, in terms of you just believe everybody. You believe every part that every person is playing in this film. And so I kind of forgot I was watching a film and thought it was a documentary. That's kind of how real it felt.
Yeah, I think the performances that particularly caught me on that was Adèle Haenel and Antoine Renat, who are playing the organisers of sorts. And they perfectly capture those personalities of people who just always want to be diplomatic. They're trying to keep calm and neutral, even when the situation is starting to get out of hand. And that was just, so naturalistic in that moment.
And the mum who's at the meetings with her son every week.
Yeah. And also to see in those meetings that, you know, not everyone there is HIV positive, or they have very different concerns and approaches. There are trans members who are really worried about how the medication might interact with hormone therapy. There's the mother, you said, who's the son who he's hemophiliac and he contracted it from infected blood. And so naturally, there are disagreements there. There's some people like Sean who want a more sort of aggressive approach. They want to storm into offices and yell and throw blood at the walls. But then others start worrying that that's going to mean people don't take them seriously. And so there are these incredible arguments, but they're not really arguments because this space is meant to be one of respect. And I love to think that instead of cheering or clapping, they just click in agreement. I thought that was incredible. And also, I should mention that we do see the film through the eyes of this character, Nathan, who's played by Arnaud de Valois. Hopefully that's correct.
Don't get me on saying foreign names. Scottish accent's terrible.
I know, but I'm half French. I should be perfect on the French names, but I tried. So he's more withdrawn. He's a little quieter, and I think that really helps with offering a little bit of an outsider perspective. And as he's drawn closer and closer into the group, we're drawn closer, and especially he becomes attracted to Sean, and so this romance starts to blossom in a highly politicized atmosphere. And the sex scenes are incredible. They're so passionate, and they are explicit, which I know James Ivory mentioned recently. He criticized the lack of nudity in Call Me By Your Name. So I think it's interesting to watch this film in comparison and how it deals with that. And yeah, it's just an incredible film, like sensory and political, and it's a minimal narrative, but you just feel it in your bones.
Yeah.